Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
So that vintage sound, people are looking for that acoustic guitar that's got this vintage sound. It's only because the wood has been allowed to dry up for so many years. We can reproduce that in 100 hours compared to waiting 35 years.
Welcome to the 5th season of the Woodworking Network podcast and a new episode. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by FDMC Magazine. My guest is Bob Lennon from Thermal Wood Canada. We'll be talking about thermally modifying wood and a new substitute for ebony. But first, I want to talk about the magic of wood. There's an attraction and a romance with natural wood that's hard to explain. For me, it's akin to a gut reaction that I can't control. If I see natural wood with spectacular figure and grain or used in some outstanding way, it takes my breath away. It's not just marveling at the craftsmanship, it's the draw of the wood itself. Not far away from my house in Maine is a lumber yard called Rare Woods USA. It specializes in exotic hardwoods from all over the world and has multiple warehouses full of amazing wood. I've written about the place before, and I could spend hours there just checking out the wood, seeing and touching new species, the smell of the place, the inspiration to make something from a special board. It all combines for a magical experience. James Krenoff famously wrote about keeping special boards in his shop until they spoke to him to inspire him to make something. I typically buy wood for specific projects, so I seldom succumb to the urge to take possession of a spectacular board without already knowing what I want to build. But I do know people who are self-described woodaholics. One gentleman I know has a whole barn full of some of the most spectacular wood you have ever seen. It's way more than his custom furniture shop needs, probably for beyond his lifetime. But he still keeps buying more wood. After years of design trends for cabinets being dominated by paint, designers tell me the wood look is back. But that includes increasingly realistic synthetic substitutes that mimic the look, color, grain, and texture of natural wood without the finicky workability issues that wood sometimes imposes. That's good because demand for the best natural wood continues to outstrip supply. Environmental considerations mean we might not always be able to obtain highly sought-after species. And new technologies, such as thermally or chemically treating natural wood, are allowing more widely available and renewable species to stand in for some exotics, or even to compete with synthetic materials in exterior applications. Still, there is something intangible about spectacular natural wood. Marveling at the chatoyance of quilted maple, or the intricate swirling grain of a burl, running your fingers down the rich chocolate surface of some perfect black walnut, or enjoying the dynamic surprise of stripes of ray lines as you open up a quarter-sawn white oak board for the first time. These are things that feed the magic of natural wood in my soul. It helps to remind us that working with wood is working with a unique and living material. No two pieces are identical. It inhales and exhales the moisture in the air, expanding and contracting constantly. No matter how perfect the board is, it is not entirely homogeneous. And those who treat wood as if it were homogeneous are destined to experience failure. I'll take that challenge any day just to savor the magic of wood. Before we get to our interview with Bob Lennon, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. FDMC Magazine is your vital source of information to improve your woodworking business. Whether it is keeping you apprised of the latest advances in manufacturing, helping you solve your wood technology problems with Gene Wenger, or inspiring you with case histories about successful businesses and best practices, FDMC Magazine is there to be the sharpest business tool in your shop. Learn more and subscribe for free at woodworkingnetwork.com/FDMC. Now let's talk about thermally modified wood with Bob Lennon. Today, my guest is Bob Lennon, president of Thermal Wood Canada. His company is in the business of making thermally modified wood products, which is a growing segment of the woodworking industry. Welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast, Bob.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show, Will.
Well, I first heard about your company in relation to an intriguing new ebony substitute called Obsidian Ebony. But before we talk about that, first let's explore some of the basics. What is thermally modified wood, and why would someone want to consider using thermally modified wood?
Well, there's a number of reasons on why people might want to consider it. Is that all we use is heat and steam to be able to transform the wood. And when I talk about transforming the wood, what we're doing, and our expertise is in hardwoods. The technology comes from Europe, was actually introduced into North America back in oh 2015, 2016. Oh no, sorry, excuse me, well before that, 2006, 2005, around there somewhere. And very well known in Europe, um, entering an old mature market here in North America. But what we do, and it was designed to basically treat softwoods, but we've turned it over and use it for hardwoods. So the characteristics that come out of the process is that the wood is very, very stable. It becomes hydrophobic. It doesn't take any moisture from the air. No,
Hmm.
very little contraction, very little swelling. So now you can use hardwoods and actually put them outside, along with the fact that we've removed all the organic properties in the wood because we reach temperatures up to 200 degrees Celsius, which is roughly about 450, 460 degrees Fahrenheit. And we actually change the molecular structure of the wood. So we densify it. We change colors. So the wood that was, white, yellowish color, no matter what it is, the North American hardwoods are all in that range. They turn to a brown, rich color, and the grains of wood really pop out. So for woodworkers, you can really see the grain in the wood. The other part about getting to those temperatures, we also remove all the organic properties, and a lot of them are sugars that cause the wood to rot, cause fungus to grow on the wood, attract insects. Well, all of a sudden, we've removed that. We basically petrified the wood, only using heat and steam.
Interesting. Now, I know there are others. I've had some experience with some of these. I worked with lignia, which I believe is no longer made, and that was a pine that was modified. And I'm familiar with Akoya and Kebony, some of the other brands that are out there. But I gather there's, in addition to just thermally modifying, there are some folks that use chemicals and polymerize the wood to some extent. Do you do any of that?
When we get into it, we're going to be talking about the obsidian ebony. We'll talk a little bit about that part, but in the we only use heat and steam in the process that we do. And like you talked about, Kibini and Akoya, those are woods that actually are infused under pressure with
Right.
various properties. And on top of that, there's a number of different technologies out there, even in the thermal side. You've got open systems that use steam to reduce the oxygen in the chamber so it doesn't burn at those temperatures. But you also have systems that are under pressure, just like a pressure treated lumber. And so there's a number of different technologies out there. The technology that we operate allows us to be a member of the Thermo Wood Association that's out of Finland. And they are the only governing body in the world that audit you on a yearly basis for quality and set the standards on where you have to reach in temperatures. And are continuously doing research on different species to allow us as the operators to be able to adjust depending on what's going on without having to do all the research yourself.
That's interesting. Now, some of the common uses for modified wood have to do with outdoors applications, because you were just talking about how that makes the wood more durable against moisture and that sort of thing. But your latest product goes into a completely different direction, coming up with a substitute for ebony in musical instruments applications, such as guitar fingerboards. How did that come about?
Well, we got involved in just thermally modifying wood for the music industry, the stringed instruments, and predominantly guitars is where we started with. And the reason why they were interested in this process was the stability. So again, having a very stable neck, very stable body, allowed musicians to tune up their guitar in a room that was air conditioned and then step out on the stage that might have quite a bit high humidity out on the stage and not
And
having to
stay in
retune.
tune. Yeah.
Yeah, and stay in tune. So that was a big thing. The other thing too is that there's been studies done in Germany that state that the thermal modification replaces 35 years of natural air drying. So that vintage sound, people are looking for that acoustic guitar that's got this vintage sound, and it's only because the wood has been allowed to dry up for so many years. We can reproduce that in 100 hours compared to waiting 35 years. And
Wow.
so what this has allowed people to do, because we do a lot of tops for acoustic guitars now, and I have clients as far as the state of Washington, British Columbia, that send me their wood to treat, uh, because again, it allows these people that are in more of a mass production, not the one ofs, and the luthier that's had that piece of wood sitting in his little shop there for the last 30 some years, and somebody comes in and decides that they want a guitar. Well, now the big guys can, or medium-sized guys can actually get into the game and to be able to go and get that vintage sound. And so that's, where we started, was working with these guys, but we also listened to the voice of the customer. And every place I went to, we were hearing more and more about, ebony being an issue, being on the CITES list, being harder to get, the amount of administrative paperwork that had to be done with trying to acquire some ebony, and that was shooting prices up at the same time. All of these things were things we were hearing, and um, we were working with a couple of scientists to try to figure out how do you glue this wood, because again, it's different, right? It's hydrophobic. It doesn't take any moisture, so a lot of glues are activated by moisture. So we needed to find out what kind of glues we could use. The scientists that we're using were the guys that invented Kibini.
Huh.
And so they were always interested in seeing what they could shove into a piece of wood. So they asked if they could use some of our samples of thermally modified to see what they could do with resins. And so they had left with a bunch of samples, and with the project in mind of the glues, they came back with my report, and at the same time with all these samples that had dropped off on the desk, and they had various colors. And I went, wonder what we could use this for. And that just kind of stood there for a while. And then till one day, the link got made between the music industry and the issues that they had with acquiring ebony and this. And I said, well, if we could get pinks and greens and blues, can we get black?
Right.
And then we started really working towards the getting the black, which took quite a bit of time. And that's how we got into it. And then it just started to grow from there.
It's interesting you mentioned about the glue. I worked a little bit with some of the folks at Akoya in testing some PUR glue on similar, thermally modified products. What did you decide is the best glue to work with this obsidian ebony?
Yeah. Well, the PVA glues are the best glues to be able to use, and then that's for the thermally modified. But then when we go to use an obsidian, because we're infusing resins already into the wood,
Uh-huh.
got to go with more of an epoxy,
Ah,
and it's like a little bit like fiberglass in a way.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now that brings us to sort of the question about performance. So how does this modified wood compare to natural ebony? What are the differences in performance and use?
Well, one of the things is that first of all, it comes from sustainable sources. So we're using maple as our base of wood, and so we thermally modify it. Then we put it into a pressure vessel with a concoction and a mixture of different resins and fat and hardeners and dyes, and we infuse that under pressure into the wood, and then we cure it in place. So that's the process. We don't have, and what I've done is allowed the music industry to tell me whether or not this is a suitable product for them. And so I sent samples out in early in our beginnings, and this has been a 7-year process, by the way. So
Yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight when you think you're going to do research right away. But so we sent out samples to some of the big guys and said, can you test this for us? Because we can't test tone. We can't, we can test workability. But again, you're doing different shapes, you're doing different things. So we sent it to them. And everybody came back with very, very positive results. From the small luthiers that were working with it to the big guys that were working with it. And at one point in time, and I won't mention their names, but the big guy that came back to us and said, "We're interested. We want some." All right. Explain and give me a number and quantify the word some. Then I'll know if you like it. And so the first number they came to was 400,000 pieces. And that was good indication to me that they like what they've seen and it was there. And we've also had others that came back to me and said, listen, it's got the same type of properties as ebony does. It's a little bit less dense than ebony is. It's very workable. They can put the frets in and they don't have any issues with popping them back out. And there was a number of things that they liked about it. And plus, we can get to a complete black color, which with ebony has been difficult to get in the last number of years because there's all these streaks of brown that are in between, so you can't get a pure black. And for the violin world and the viola world and the cello world, they are really struck on the fact that it's black. They
Yeah,
don't want.
so some of the manufacturers have been trying to promote the color streaked ebony as a feature,
Yeah.
and that's not going to fly with orchestral
No,
instruments.
no, it will with guitars and that kind of stuff because a couple of years back I was at the NAMM show and I had one that was uh, kind of a uh, purplish color with curly maple, and the heavy metal world loved it.
Yeah,
And there's certain uh, brands inside, if I can use brands or maybe genres is probably a better way of putting it, inside the guitar world that allow for openness and looking for all these different colors and painted bodies and that kind of stuff on guitars, which you will never find with somebody playing a cello.
yeah. Well, Bob Taylor at Taylor Guitars seems to be doing all right with some of his color streaked ebony fingerboards and things like that he's been doing. But still the holy grail is that ink black, perfectly
Yeah.
smooth fingerboard.
Yeah. Now there is when we use it, and everybody has been, coming back with great reviews. Uh, Occasionally, though, we have some people because it just thermally modified wood has a particular smell to it to start with because
Oh, interesting.
it's more like a burnt smell. But then you include and put resins into that. Now all of a sudden you're into more of a fiberglass type of a smell. And for some, they don't like that at all. And
Hmm.
for others, they tell us, listen, there's a bit of a smell on this, but nothing that would be a showstopper. And so still works well. The workability of it, the weight of it, everything seems to fit into to what they're looking for. So I think we found the right recipe to be able to do it. And now it's basically we're launching out in the market by slowly, sending samples out to different people, by talking about it, by getting it out there. And I've got quite a few that are very interested in now and testing it in for large quantities.
Interesting. Now, what kind of advice do you have about machinability? Does it work differently than natural ebony? I mean, when I played with some of the Lignia product, I remembered it was kind of brittle, and you had to like pre-drill screw holes, or it would split. That's usually not an issue with ebony fingerboards since you're not putting holes for screws in them. But how does the obsidian ebony perform like that?
Well, the only real work that we've done with them is, putting them on a CNC machine and drilling it and seeing, how it works that way. Uh, my knowledge doesn't come from the music industry. I'm the wood guy, so it's more of allowing them to be able to use it. And again, everybody that we've had and has given us some really positive feedback about how it works. We've had a number of other podcasts that have been done with guys that are demonstrating how to use it and that kind of stuff. Like Robbie O'Brien is one, and he did one about 2 months ago, and he was saying that he didn't find any issues working with it at all. So that was all good comments, and there was two or three others that are out there that end up giving us some good reviews.
Yeah, I watched one video. I can't remember who it was, but it was a smaller luthier who was saying that he'd actually gotten an allergy to working natural ebony uh, from the dust, and that didn't seem to be a problem with the obsidian ebony. So I guess the smell didn't bother him.
Well, yeah, and it's everybody's different, right? So, and I know smells bother me as an example, and certain times during the process, I'll find that I'm a little bit lightheaded. But once you've cured it, and that's looking at it and being in the room that has all the liquid resins, but once you've cured it under heat, it becomes inert. So
That's
there's
great.
no in any testing that we've done, and we've done testing actually on the dust. I burnt some of it and collected the fumes around to see whether or not there was anything, and there's absolutely nothing. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, well, I'm really interested to get a sample and play with it. I've built some mandolins and guitars over the years, and curious to see how it works for inlays and things like that. Should be interesting.
Well, I'll definitely make sure I put a couple of fingerboards in the box and ship them down to you so you can try them out. And then again, like everybody else, the feedback that we receive from this is more knowledge for us. We're not in that industry; we're in the wood industry, so I want the much better off when it's coming from the potential client and letting us know if they like it, and then it allows us to be able to tweak things if we can.
That sounds great. Now, what other modified wood products do you offer? Can you sort of give us a quick list of? It
Yeah.
sounds like there's quite a few things that you're doing.
Well, the other thing too is that the fact that you can use this in any application whatsoever. So uh, our we've got basically four different revenue streams. We were talking revenue streams at the beginning of our conversation. It wasn't just the fact of making dust, but you got to make some money on the other side. So our biggest revenue stream is the residential commercial market. So we make decking out of ash. We make siding out of maple, birch, oak, ash, any types of hardwoods whatsoever. We'll do soffit material, ceilings, accent walls, flooring, countertops, laminated countertops. And in many cases, it's the color and the aesthetics of it that attract people to this. And, we kind of over the years, and you've got a few gray hairs too, like I do. And so over the years, we've transitioned on the siding as an example. We used to have a lot of homes back in the day that were built with wooden siding. And So people kind of curved away from that because, nobody wanted to scrape, right? And as kids, you probably were the same, but I know my father sent me out with a scraper and say, here, scrape the side of the house there, and then we need to paint it. And so when the plastics came out and all the vinyls and the metals and everything else, people started to use those because they were more maintenance free. And so we kind of got away from it. But there is a clientele out there that still want to get away from the plastics because they're environmentally conscious and they don't want to end up adding more stuff to the landfill that doesn't have to be there because this stuff doesn't deteriorate. And so now they're starting to come back to wood, and now we can use this in the products, and paint doesn't peel off of this. Like there's no more humidity left in the wood. So, and that's what the sun used to hit and make bubble out, or the saps in the wood or anything that was there got pulled to the front end, and then if you didn't have a really good bond between your coating and your wood, you ended up with a bubble. So something that we don't have to do. So our wood ends up in our we sell quite a bit of siding now, and it ends up in a lot of homes that have stone, a lot of glass, a lot of wood mixture in between. That's kind of the style where it ends up. And you can coat this with different UV coatings, or you can put certain paints on it. I did my house. My house is a test bed, and I did my siding, and I coated it with a gray paint. And my concept is that if the gray paint wears off, the sun's going to hit it, and then it'll turn gray in behind. And so I shouldn't have to do any maintenance. It's been 7 years, and it's still in perfect condition. So that's the residential commercial market. Then we have business to business, where we make components for the outdoor furniture guys. So the people that make benches and tables and all kinds of things, garbage cans and stuff to go into parks and those kind of things in cities that have all these benches all over the place. So we're starting to supply components to them. And so all they do is then just assemble them all together. The boards are all cut to their specifications. And then we're also involved in the door manufacturing business, where they make solid wooden doors out of 1 3/4 inch thick. And we do those out of maple, Doug fir, and mahogany.
Hmm.
And so, and we have all the components cut here for the customer. So we've got 145 different SKUs for these guys, and they call up and say, okay, I need so many of this, so many of that, and so many of this. And we also treat for others. I talked to you a while ago about treating wood from people that are coming from state of Washington and out in BC. Well, that's for the music industry, but we also treat for others that have massive amounts of wood that they want treated, but they don't want to go and spend the millions of dollars on one of these kilns. So we also offer the service. So we've got clients from British Columbia that are sending us Western hemlock and Doug fir to treat, and then we're shipping it from our facility here in New Brunswick to like last week we shipped out a container that went to Brisbane, Australia.
Wow.
And so, and that wood came from Vancouver to us. We treated it, and then we packaged it up and put it in a container and ship it to Australia. So
Wow.
it's interesting on how wood would travel, right?
Yeah, yeah. Now, if somebody wants to try one of these products like the obsidian ebony, how do they get it?
The easiest way is to reach out to us through our website. So at www.thermalwoodcanada.com. And then there's the contact information is all there to be able to get a hold of us. And whether it's obsidian ebony or decking or siding, any products whatsoever, or if it's just to talk and to ask questions about the process before they do anything, please feel free to reach out.
Well, that's great. It's really exciting. One last question I have for you is what do you think the future of modified wood products is?
Well, I think it's huge. If I look at the amount of operators that are in North America today, there's only 8 of them, and that's 8 that are here and parked and operating in our country. And there's probably about 60 to 80 of them in Europe. And so now, what shows me that because our revenues are increasing every year, and people are starting to get to know us more and more, and they're reaching out and asking and going into the projects around the world. But the Europeans are now here. They're here in North America. And so that's that tells me two things. One is that they also see the opportunities. And so they're setting up shop here. But two is that if you're an architect or somebody working on this, and not to disregard, because the people that are here, they operate the same technology that we do. So, there's nothing to be said for their technology. Most of them are part of the Thermalwood Association, so they're checked out on a regular basis. They're audited for their quality. But the big thing is that these guys are buying their wood here in North America. They're shipping it over to, Estonia or Turkey, and they're getting it processed and shipping it back. Now, if you're conscious about the environment, if you're conscious about carbon footprint, if you're conscious about global warming, all this transportation doesn't add any value to this. And so you need to ask those questions, because they're coming in and, using some fancy marketing on saying, it's all Canadian wood, or it's all North America. Yeah, it is. Can't argue that point. They're buying it here from the same suppliers, but they're shipping it over and bringing it back.
Yeah, no, definitely. It sounds like it would be better to buy local.
Well, that comes into but all I'm saying is that in many cases is that people need to ask the questions. They need to not be shy to ask what the temperatures are. And it's just like all the different technologies out there, like you asked about Kibini and Akoya a while ago, you threw that into the mix. Well, those aren't thermally modified, but people don't know. So you need
Right.
to ask those questions. And if you ask the questions, you'll find out. And then the more that you know, then you can make an educated decision on what you're going to do.
That sounds great. And again, that website was thermalwoodcanada.com. And
.com.
thanks, Bob, for chatting with us. I'm anxious to try your product, and maybe one of these days I'll drive up to New Brunswick and check out your place.
Well, if you want to drive up, I would suggest you come in May and June. It's lobster season, so at least we could have a good feed of lobster. This time of the year, you're in snowstorms and cold weather. So
Yeah, I'm going to stay home where it's warm by my wood stove.
there you go.
Thanks a lot, Bob. It's great.
You're very welcome, and it was great to have me on the show, and appreciate it.
That's it for today. If you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, FDMC Magazine. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.